My sister's daughter humiliated me at my own birthday party. Clapperboard opening hook. She stood up in front of everyone, my family, my friends, the woman I had been secretly in love with for 2 years, and said the one thing I had never told a single soul. The room went completely silent. 31 candles were still burning on my cake. The frosting read "Happy Birthday," Rihanna in loopy pink letters. The fairy lights I had strung across my apartment ceiling were casting everyone in warm gold. My best friend Dia was mid-laugh at something someone had whispered to her. My coworkers were reaching for their second glasses of wine. And my niece, my 17-year-old niece Priya, my sister's daughter, the girl I had helped raise, taught to ride a bicycle, stayed up with during her first heartbreak, was standing on the coffee table with a microphone in her hand. She was smiling. That smile should have warned me. "I just want to say something about Rihanna Mossy," she announced, her voice amplified, cutting through the music. "Since she never says anything real about herself." I was still smiling. I thought it was a toast. I thought she was going to say something sweet, something embarrassing but harmless. A childhood story, maybe. The time I fell off a scooter. The time I cried at a dog food commercial. Normal Aunt Niece roast material. I had no idea my entire world was about to crack open on my 20th birthday. Part 1. The Girl Who Learned to Disappear. My name is Rihanna Sharma, and I had spent most of my adult life becoming very, very good at being invisible. Not invisible in the sad, forgotten way. I want to be clear about that. I had friends. I had a career I was proud of. I was a senior graphic designer at a mid-size advertising firm in Mumbai, and I was good at my job in the way that people who pour their whole heart into work tend to be good at things. I had an apartment I had furnished slowly and carefully over 4 years, a little at a time, until every corner of it felt like it belonged to me. I had a life. But invisible in the specific, targeted way that queer people learn when they grow up in families that love them loudly and conditionally. Invisible in the way you get when you understand, at a very young age, that there are rooms you can walk through fully, and rooms where you must leave certain parts of yourself outside the door. I had been leaving parts of myself outside my family's door for as long as I could remember. My mother was not a cruel woman. I need you to understand that. She was a woman shaped entirely by the world she had grown up in, a world where daughters got married and had children and were happy about it, or at least looked happy about it from a comfortable distance. She cooked the most extraordinary food I had ever tasted. She called me every single morning to check that I had eaten. She had cried harder than I had when I got my first big client at work, holding my face in both her hands like I was still 7 years old and had just come home with a gold star. She loved me. She just loved a version of me that I had very carefully constructed. My sister Meghna was 5 years older than me and had done everything in the right order, married at 25, first child at 27, second at 30. She lived 20 minutes from my parents and had Sunday lunches with them every week. She was warm and funny and genuinely kind, and she was also completely, cheerfully oblivious to anything that didn't fit neatly into the shape of the life she had chosen. Priya was her eldest. 17, sharp, funny, terrifyingly perceptive in the way teenagers, sometimes, are like they haven't yet learned to look away from things that make adults uncomfortable. And then there was Dia. Dia Kapoor. I am going to need a moment before I talk about Dia. I met Dia 3 years before the birthday party. We were assigned to the same project at work, a campaign for a sustainable clothing brand that was, frankly, a nightmare client, the kind that had 17 opinions about every shade of beige and wanted something clean but also rich, elevated but accessible. The kind of client that bonds 2 designers together through shared suffering. We had stayed late for the 3rd night in a row, sitting across from each other in the empty office with takeaway containers between us and our laptops, open to increasingly aggressive versions of the same mood board, and she had looked up at me at around 11:30 and said, completely deadpan, "I think beige has personally wronged me. I think beige has done something to my family." I had laughed so hard I knocked my tea over. That was the beginning. Dia was, I'm going to try to describe her without making this sound like a fever dream, but I cannot promise anything. She was tall, with the kind of effortless posture that came from a childhood of baritone at EM classes. She complained about endlessly but clearly hadn't entirely hated. She had dark eyes that were always slightly amused, like she was watching the world do something moderately ridiculous and was entertained by it. She laughed easily and loudly, and without any of the self-consciousness that I had always felt about my own laugh. She had strong opinions about fonts and very strong opinions about film scores, and the most absurd, specific knowledge about obscure architectural details in Mumbai buildings that she would produce without warning in the middle of completely unrelated conversations. She was also, without any apparent effort or awareness, the most magnetic person I had ever been near. Within 6 months, she was my closest friend. Within a year, I knew I was in trouble. It had started the way these things always start, slowly, and then all at once. A Tuesday afternoon when we were walking back from a client meeting, and the monsoon broke without warning, and we ran laughing to duck under a bookshop awning, standing pressed together while the rain came down in sheets, and she had turned to look at me with rain on her eyelashes and said, "I love this city so much it physically hurts sometimes." And something in my chest had done something it had absolutely no business doing. I had recognized the feeling immediately. I had felt it before, once, in college, for a girl in my painting class who had never known. I knew what it was. I knew what it meant. And I knew, with the particular clarity of someone who has spent a lifetime making practical decisions about their own heart, exactly what I was going to do about it. Nothing. I was going to do absolutely nothing about it. Because Dia was straight. Or she seemed to be. She had mentioned an ex-boyfriend once, briefly, in the context of a story about a terrible vacation. She had never said anything that made me think otherwise. And more importantly, she was my best friend, the person I talked to about everything, the person who texted me at midnight about the documentary she was watching, the person who knew which coffee order I needed depending on what kind of day I was having. If I said anything, if I let anything show, I would lose her. And losing her was not something I was prepared to survive. So I had done what I was very, very good at doing. I had become invisible. Inside myself, in the specific room where I kept this particular feeling, I had installed a very solid door and I had locked it and I had carried on. For 2 years, I had carried on. Part 2, the party. The birthday party had been Dia's idea. "You never celebrate yourself," she had told me 3 weeks before, standing in my kitchen eating a mango she had helped herself to without asking, which was very on brand for her. "Every year you say, it's fine, let's just do dinner. And then we do dinner and it's nice, but you deserve a thing, Riina, a real thing, with people and lights and a cake." "I have lights," I had said, pointing at the fairy lights strung across my ceiling. "Those are just there," she said. "That doesn't count, let me throw you a party." I had said yes because I was weak when it came to Dia specifically, and also because she had the kind of enthusiasm that made you want to say yes to things just to keep watching it. She had spent the next 3 weeks planning with an intensity that I found simultaneously touching and mildly alarming. She had made a playlist. She had coordinated with my coworkers. She had personally gone to 3 bakeries to find the right one for the cake. She had also, somehow, invited my family. This was the part I had not entirely anticipated. My parents came. My sister Meghna came, slightly frazzled, having arranged for her younger daughter to be dropped with a neighbor. And Priya came, which I was genuinely happy about. Priya and I had always had a good relationship. She was one of the few family members I felt genuinely relaxed around. The party was, for the first hour and a half, exactly as lovely as Dia had envisioned. The apartment was full of warm noise. Someone had brought good wine. My colleague Anand had told the same 3 stories he always told at social gatherings, and everyone had laughed at them anyway because Anand was one of those people. My mother had cried a little when she saw the cake, which was exactly what my mother did, and I had hugged her and felt the particular complicated warmth of loving someone who couldn't fully know you. Dia was everywhere, refilling glasses, making introductions, laughing with my coworkers, pulling my mother into a conversation about regional cuisine with the ease of someone who had been in this family for years. She was wearing a dark green kurta with delicate mirrorwork at the hem and her hair was down, and she was, I thought for the 40,000th time in 2 years, catastrophically beautiful. I was watching her from across the room when Priya appeared at my elbow. "Mossy," she said. "Hey, baby," I said, turning to smile at her. "Are you having a good time?" "Mum." She was watching Dia too, with that sharp, slightly sideways look she had sometimes. "She's your best friend, right, Dia?" "Yeah," I said, 3 years. "She really loves you," Priya said, not casually. In that particular tone she had sometimes, careful and deliberate, like she was placing something delicate on a table. I felt something shift just slightly in my chest. "She's a good friend," I said carefully. Priya looked at me. Just looked at me for a moment with those dark eyes that were too much like my sister's and somehow also entirely her own. "Right," she said and smiled, and drifted away. I should have paid more attention to that smile. An hour later, Priya was on my coffee table. She had, I realized in retrospect, been circling. I had been too busy hosting, too busy being present in that managed, careful way I always was in rooms that contained both my family and my real life. I hadn't noticed her watching me watch Dia. Hadn't noticed the way she had been talking to people at the edges of the party, collecting something, storing something up. "Reena Mossy has always been my favorite person," she said into the microphone. Where had she even gotten a microphone? Whose Bluetooth speaker had she commandeered? And the room settled into an expectant, affectionate quiet. "She taught me so much. How to draw, how to drive, how to be brave." There was a soft murmur, some smiles. My mother pressed her hand to her heart. Meghna was filming. "But the bravest thing Reena Mossy has never done," Priya continued, and something in her voice shifted, something that should have made me move, should have made me cross the room, "is tell Dia Auntie how she actually feels." The room went quiet in a different way. I stopped breathing. "For literally 2 years," Priya said, and she was still smiling, still talking in this light, almost teasing tone, like she was telling a charming story. "She has been completely, totally, 100% in love with her best friend, and she's never said anything, so I thought someone should." She looked directly at me. "Happy birthday, Mossy." The silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then the room erupted, but not all in the same direction. My coworkers were confused. Anand made a startled sound. My mother's face had done something I couldn't read from across the room. My sister lowered her phone, slowly. And Dia. Dia had turned. She was looking at me, and I could not read her face at all. Part 3, the night everything broke. I did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. I excused myself, walked very calmly to my bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and stared at the wall for approximately 6 minutes while the party continued, muffled and surreal on the other side of the door. My phone lit up. "Dia, are you okay?" I didn't answer. It lit up again. "Reena, tell me where you are." And then a knock on the bathroom door. Not loud. Quiet, 3 soft knocks and then, "It's me." Her voice. I didn't move for a moment. Then I got up and opened the door. Dia was standing in the narrow hallway outside the bathroom, and she had that expression I could never fully interpret, the one that was very still and very focused, like she was watching something carefully. The party sounds drifted from the other room. Someone had turned the music back on, probably in that instinctive human way of filling an uncomfortable silence. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. We stood there for a moment. "Do you want to go up to the terrace?" she asked. The building I lived in had a rooftop terrace that nobody really used. It was unlocked and mostly empty, just a water tank and some old chairs someone had left up there years ago, and a view of the city that I had come up to see, alone, more times than I could count. I nodded. We went up. Mumbai at night from a rooftop is a particular kind of beautiful, dense and lit and constant. All those windows and headlights and the distant orange smear of the horizon where the sea was. We sat in the old chairs, close but not touching, and the city moved below us without any awareness of what was happening up here. For a long time, Neither of us said anything. I'm going to kill her, I said finally. She's 17, Dia said. I'm going to wait until she's 18, and then I'm going to kill her. A small breath of a laugh from Dia, then quiet again. Riina, she said. Her voice was different, careful in a way it almost never was. Dia was, as a rule, someone who said what she was thinking. The care was noticeable. You don't have to, I said quickly. Say anything. About it. I know. And nothing has to change, okay? Nothing is going to change. I've been fine for 2 years and I'm going to keep being fine, and I'm really sorry that Priya did that in front of everyone. You didn't deserve to be ambushed like that. Riina. And I just need you to know that I'm not going to make things weird, because you're my best friend and I'm not stupid enough to. Riina, her voice was firmer now, please stop. I stopped. She was looking at the city. Her profile was lit from below by all those lights, and I thought, this is the face I am going to remember for the rest of my life, regardless of what she says next. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay, I said. My voice came out surprisingly steady. I've been trying to tell you something for about 8 months, she said. And I couldn't figure out how, because you have this way of just deflecting. Whenever I tried to get close to actually saying it, you'd make a joke or change the subject or just sort of not be available for it. And I told myself I was imagining things, and then I told myself it didn't matter, and then I told myself it would work itself out. And then your 17-year-old niece stood on your coffee table and said it all for me. I turned to look at her. She was still looking at the city. What are you saying? I asked, very quietly. She turned then, and the expression on her face was one I had never seen before. It was open in a way Dia almost never let herself be in front of people. Dia was warm and funny and generous, but there was always a layer of lightness over her, a shield of humor and ease. That shield was not there right now. I'm saying, she said carefully, that I have been trying to figure out for a very long time why I feel the way I feel when I'm with you. And I think I've been avoiding figuring it out because figuring it out would mean I'd have to do something about it. And doing something about it was terrifying because I still don't fully know what you felt, or what any of this makes me. Or, she stopped, exhaled. I'm not very good at this. You're doing fine, I whispered. The thing is, she said, when I walked into that room tonight and everyone went quiet, the only thing was, where is she? Not what just happened, not what everyone was staring at. Just where is she? And that told me something. The city hummed below us. What did it tell you? I asked. I needed to hear her say it. I needed the actual words. She met my eyes. That I don't want to keep being careful, she said. That whatever I've been protecting myself from, by not saying anything, it's not worth it anymore. That you are worth more than my fear. I sat very still. I don't know what I am, she said. I've always thought of myself as, but maybe that's just because I never paid attention before. Maybe I just never felt, maybe you're just, she made a frustrated sound. I'm going in circles. You're doing fine, I said again. And then, because the door I had kept locked for 2 years had apparently decided to give up on me entirely. I love you. I've loved you for 2 years. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to lose you. The words came out clean and clear, without the shake I expected. Like saying them out loud had been easier than holding them had ever been. Dia looked at me for a long moment. I know, she said softly. I think I knew, and I think that's part of why I was so scared. What were you scared of? That I'd realize I felt the same way, she said, and then there'd be no going back. Silence. Is that what you're saying? I asked. That you? I don't know what I'm saying, she said. I just know that the thought of you spending your whole life not knowing that you matter to me, the way you matter to me, is something I can't live with. We sat on that rooftop for an hour and a half. We didn't resolve anything. That's the thing about real life. It isn't a movie. It doesn't wrap up clean in a single scene. We sat in those old chairs with the city around us, and we talked, really talked, for the first time about things we had been carrying separately for a very long time. She told me about the moment she had first noticed something was different. A Sunday afternoon, 8 months ago, when I had been sick with a cold, and she had come over with soup and medicine and stayed to watch old films on my sofa, and I had fallen asleep with my head near her shoulder, and she had sat very still for 2 hours rather than wake me, and realized afterward that she had spent most of those 2 hours watching me sleep, which she had told herself was simply because she was a caring friend, and then had thought about for the next 6 months. I told her about the monsoon and the bookshop awning. She laughed and said, "I was trying to impress you with the city thing. I thought you thought it was pretentious." "I thought it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said," I told her. "Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you invite me to stand under the awning, instead of pressing yourself against the wall on the other side?" "Because I didn't know yet. I didn't know you didn't know." We sat with that for a moment. "We've been very stupid," she said. "Profoundly," I agreed. She laughed, and I laughed, and it was dark and warm, and the city was doing what cities do, and nothing was decided, nothing was named, but something had shifted that couldn't unshift. Part 4, the morning after. I went back downstairs eventually. The party had mostly wound down in our absence. Coworkers had made graceful exits. My parents were waiting in the kind of careful, hovering silence that meant my mother had feelings about things. My sister Meghna was helping clean up with an expression I couldn't quite decode. Priya was sitting on the kitchen counter, eating leftover cake, looking entirely too comfortable for someone who had just detonated a bomb in someone else's life. "Priya," I said. She looked up. "Come with me," I said. We went to my bedroom, which was currently the quietest room in the apartment. I closed the door. Priya sat on my bed, holding her plate of cake, and had the grace to look at least partially remorseful. "Masi," she started. "Why?" I asked, not angry, not yet, just genuinely needing to understand. She put the cake down. "Because you were never going to say it," she said. "I've been watching you for a year. Every time she looks at you, every time you look at her, and then you both just look away and act normal, and it's mossy. It was physically painful to watch. I thought maybe you just needed a push." "A push," I repeated, in front of 30 people, including my mother. Maybe a push is the wrong word. "Maybe," I said. She looked at me. "Are you actually angry?" I considered this honestly. "I don't know yet," I said. "Something happened, something good, I think. But the way you did it, Priya, that wasn't your decision to make. That was mine, my life, my timing, my choice." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said. "I know that. I love you. And watching you disappear around people you love, watching you be smaller than you are, it's been happening my whole life, and I just—" She stopped. Her voice had gone a little thick. "I see you," she said quietly. "The real you, I've always seen you, and I wanted everyone else to see you too." I sat down next to her on the bed. I was still not entirely sure how I felt about what she had done. That would take time. That was a more complicated conversation for a calmer day. But sitting next to her, looking at her young, earnest face, I felt something soften. "I know you love me," I said, "and I love you. But next time you want to set my life on fire, can you at least warn me first?" She almost smiled. "Define warn." "A text, 24 hours in advance, that's all I ask." She pressed her lips together to keep from grinning. "I can probably do that." My mother found me in the kitchen after Priya went to bed. She and Meghna were staying over since it was late. I was washing glasses, which was what I did when I needed to feel like I had control over something. She came and stood beside me. For a while she just stood there, and I kept washing glasses. "You should have told me," she said finally. My hands stilled in the water. "Ma," I started. "Not tonight, not like that, but someday, before now." She paused. "I'm your mother." "I know," I said. I was scared. "Of what?" I turned to look at her. She was looking back at me, and she looked tired and older than I usually let myself notice, and real. Just real. A person, imperfect and complicated, who had loved me imperfectly and completely my entire life. "That you'd look at me differently," I said. "That something would change." She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and turned off the tap. She took the glass out of my hands. She held my wet hands in both of hers. "You are my daughter," she said, and her voice was not perfectly steady. "Whatever you are, whatever you want, you are my daughter." It wasn't everything. It wasn't the easy, simple acceptance that I had sometimes watched other people get and quietly grieved. It was imperfect and incomplete, and I could see in her face that there were thoughts and feelings and adjustments happening that she hadn't finished processing yet. But it was real, and she said it, and she held my hands. I started crying in a way I hadn't cried in years. Part 5, The Distance. Here is what happened next, and I want to be honest about it because the stories that skip this part are lying to you. Dia and I did not immediately become something. We didn't walk down from that rooftop and fall into each other. Real feelings, named out loud for the first time, are not a beginning, they are a doorway. And walking through a doorway takes time, especially when both of you are standing on opposite sides, both a little uncertain, both still figuring out what you're walking toward. The week after the party was strange. We texted normally, more or less. She sent me a meme about Monday mornings, and I sent her back a voice note complaining about a difficult client. We went to get coffee on Wednesday, which was our usual Wednesday coffee, and it was mostly fine, mostly us, except that there were these small silences that hadn't been there before. Not uncomfortable, exactly. More like charged. Like the air in a room when a storm is coming, when the pressure changes before a single drop falls. On Thursday, she sent me a message that said, "I've been thinking." I waited. I don't want to mess this up. A pause, and then, "You're the most important person in my daily life. If something changes and then it doesn't work." I typed back, "I know." "I'm not saying no. I'm saying I need to think." "I know," I typed again. And then, "Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." This was true. I had meant it when I said it. But I want to be honest about the fact that the next several weeks were not easy. Because I had spent 2 years locking a door, and now the door was open, and I could not close it again, and knowing she was thinking and not knowing what she was thinking was its own particular kind of difficult. I threw myself into work. I took on an extra project, a rebrand for a restaurant chain that required an absurd amount of attention to detail, which was exactly what I needed. I spent long evenings in the office, came home tired enough to fall asleep quickly, kept myself busy in the way you do when you're trying to exist in the space between something ending and something new. Priya texted me once, 2 weeks after the party. "I know I messed up. I'm sorry. I love you." I texted back, "I love you too. We'll talk soon. I'm just figuring some things out." Is she figuring things out too? Yes. Is that scary? I looked at the question for a while. Yes, I typed, but also okay. 3 weeks after the party, on a Sunday, Dia called me. "Can you come over?" she said. I went. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a building in Bandra. All uneven bookshelves and excellent lighting, and a small balcony where she kept plants with varying degrees of success. I had been here hundreds of times. I sat in my usual spot on her sofa, left cushion, feet tucked under me, and she made tea without asking how I wanted it because she knew. She brought the cups over and sat on the other end of the sofa and tucked her feet up too. And we sat for a moment in that warm quiet that had always been one of my favorite things about being with her. "I want to tell you what I've been thinking," she said. "Okay," I said. She looked down at her tea. "I've been trying to figure out what I am, like as a question, as a label, and I kept getting stuck on it, kept feeling like I needed to have the answer before I could say anything to you. And then I realized I was doing the exact thing you do. I was making myself wait until I had a neat, safe answer before I'd let myself feel anything." She looked up. "I don't have a neat answer," she said. "I don't know what word fits. All I know is that for 3 years, you have been the person I most wanted to talk to about everything. You are the person I call when something good happens and when something terrible happens. You're the first person I think of when I see something beautiful. And for the last 8 months, I've been avoiding looking at what that means because it was easier. And I don't want to do that anymore." The city sounds drifted in from the balcony. "So what are you saying?" I asked, very quietly. "I'm saying I want to try," she said. I'm saying I'm scared, and I don't fully know what I'm doing, and this is new territory for me. But I'd rather be in new territory with you than stay in familiar territory without you. I looked at her for a long moment. Are you sure? I asked. Not because I want you to say no, but because I need you to be sure. Because you're my best friend, and that's not nothing, that's everything. And if this isn't what you actually want, if you're saying it because of what Priya said, because of the party, because you felt pushed. I'm sure, she said, simply, directly, the way Dia said things when she meant them completely. I believed her. Part 6, New Territory. We took it slowly. Deliberately, carefully, both of us aware of what was at stake, and both of us, I think, wanting to build something real rather than something rushed. The first time I held her hand, really held it, not the casual contact of best friends, but her hand in mine, fingers interlaced, on a walk along Carter Road on a quiet evening 2 weeks after that Sunday on her sofa. My heart was doing something that I was fairly certain was medically significant. She was talking about a project she was working on, describing it with her usual animated intensity. And mid-sentence, she reached over and took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it was something we had always done, and kept talking. And I stopped being able to hear what she was saying because every bit of my attention was focused on the impossible reality of her hand in mine. She noticed, eventually, that I had stopped responding. "Rena," she said. "Ma," I said. "You've gone very quiet." "I'm fine," I said. "I'm present, I'm completely present, I'm very much here." She looked at me, and then she looked down at our hands, and then the corner of her mouth curved up. "How long," she said, "did you want to hold my hand before you did?" "That is a question I refuse to answer on the grounds that it will embarrass me," I said. She laughed, and I looked at her laughing in the evening light by the sea, and I thought, I did not know it was possible to feel like this. Like something that had been contracted tight inside me for years was slowly, slowly unfolding. There were complications, of course, because there always are. My mother called me the week after we became official, which is to say the week after I texted Dia at midnight saying, I think we should stop calling this, figuring things out, and call it what it actually is, and she had replied with just a single emoji, a small yellow flower, which somehow said everything. My mother called and we talked for a long time, and she said things that were imperfect, and some things that hurt a little, and some things that were more generous than I had expected. She said she needed time. I said I understood. I told her that I had someone in my life who was important to me, and that I hoped, eventually, she'd be able to see what I saw. "The Dia from your party?" she asked. "Yes," I said. A pause. "She helped me find the bathroom when I was looking for it," my mother said. "She seemed nice." "She's the best person I know," I said. Another pause. "I just want you to be happy," my mother said, and her voice was complicated and real and imperfect, and I loved her for it. "I am," I said. "I think I finally am." Meghna was different. Meghna called me 3 days after the party, when I had been expecting this call and slightly dreading it, and said, "I want you to know that I'm sorry it took me this long to be someone you felt safe being honest with." I hadn't been prepared for that. "Meghna." "No, let me say it," she said. "I've been thinking about it since the party, about how you grew up in the same house I did, and I've known you our whole lives, and I didn't see it, or I didn't let myself, and I should have, so I'm sorry." I sat with the phone held very tight. "I love you," I said, because it was true and because sometimes that's all you can say. "I love you too," she said. "Now tell me about Dia. Actually tell me, not the she's just a friend version." I started talking. I talked for 45 minutes. Priya, when we finally had our real conversation, about 3 weeks after the party, was different from what I expected. I had braced for defensiveness, or for the breezy confidence of someone who had decided their interference had been justified by outcome. What I found instead was a teenager who had been sitting with genuine guilt, who had spent those weeks actually thinking about what she'd done and why. "I told myself it was for you," she said. "But I think it was also just I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix the thing that was making you sad. and I didn't think about whether that was my place. It wasn't your place, I said, gently but clearly. I know, she said. I'm sorry, I mean it. I know you do, I said, and then because it was also true, and I'm not going to lie to you, the way it happened was mortifying, and we are going to have to work through that. But Priya, I looked at her. What you said that you see me, the real me, do you know how long it's been since someone said that to me? She shook her head. A very long time, I said. So, I'm not going to be angry forever. I just need you to understand that seeing someone doesn't give you the right to speak for them. I understand, she said. And also, I said, the next time you want to make a speech at someone's birthday party, maybe lead with a nice story about them instead of their deepest secret. She pressed her lips together. In my defense, she started. Priya. Right, yes, noted. Part 7, The Quiet Revolution. 3 months later. I am going to tell you about a Sunday morning, because Sunday mornings, I have come to believe, are where real life actually happens, not in the big moments, not in the speeches and the revelations and the confessions on rooftops, but in the ordinary Sundays that come after. I woke up in Dia's apartment, in the particular slanted light that came through her bedroom window in the early morning, and she was still asleep, her hair across the pillow and her face relaxed in a way it never quite was when she was awake. I lay there for a while, just looking at the ceiling, listening to the city start up outside. I thought about the years I had spent being invisible, making myself small, leaving parts of myself outside certain doors. I thought about all the energy that had taken, the constant, careful management of what I said, what I showed, who I was in which room. I thought about how exhausted I had always been without quite understanding why. I did not feel exhausted now. I felt instead something I was still learning how to name. It was quieter than I expected, not the fireworks I had once imagined happiness might feel like. More like a window opening. More like something settling, finally, into its right place. Dia shifted, blinked, saw me watching her and made a face. That's creepy, she said, voice rough with sleep. You're creepy, I said. Stunning comeback, she stretched. How long have you been awake? A while. What were you thinking about? I looked at her, this person I had loved from a distance for so long, who was now close enough that I could see the sleep crease on her cheek, who knew what coffee I needed depending on my mood, who had walked through the same door I had been afraid to open and found me on the other side. How glad I am that Priya stood on that coffee table, I said. She laughed, properly, fully, the laugh I had always loved. Don't tell her that, she said. She'll never let either of us live it down. She already knows, I said. She texted me this week. She said, and I quote, "You're welcome." Dia covered her face with her hands. She's a menace. She's the best menace I know, I said. We lay there in the morning light, the city doing its Sunday things outside, and I thought, I spent so long being afraid of being known. Afraid that if the right people saw me, really saw me, all of me, something irreplaceable would break. But what actually broke was the locked door. And behind it was this particular Sunday morning light, this person, this ordinary, extraordinary feeling of being exactly where I was supposed to be, in a life that was finally fully mine. Part 8, The Reckoning and the Revenge. Now, I promised you a revenge story, and I want to be honest with you about what revenge looks like when it's real. It doesn't always look the way you expect. I could tell you about the way I handled the aftermath of the party, the dignified, composed way I returned to that room and looked at every person who had witnessed my most private truth being announced without my consent and held my head up. That was a kind of strength. I could tell you about going into work the following week and having Anand awkwardly say, "So, your party was eventful," and me looking at him steadily and saying, "Yes, it was a great party, thanks for coming," and watching him realize that I was not going to be embarrassed, that I was not going to give him the uncomfortable conversation he was bracing for, that I was simply going to be exactly who I was and let that be that. That was a kind of power. But the real revenge, the quiet, lasting, undefeatable kind, was this. Living. fully, visibly, without apology. I had spent years making myself small so that people wouldn't have to look at me too closely, so that they could love me comfortably without being asked to stretch. And in doing that, I had not been protecting them. I had been starving myself. The revenge against every year of careful invisibility was becoming visible, was calling my mother back a month after the party and saying, "I want you to meet Dia properly. Can we come for dinner?" And hearing my mother say, after a pause, "Yes, come on Saturday. I'll make dal makhani." The revenge was sitting at that dinner table, at my mother's table, with the person I loved beside me, eating my mother's food, and watching my mother ask Dia questions about her work with the particular intense hospitality she reserved for people she had decided to absorb into her life. It was not perfectly smooth. There were pauses. There were moments of careful navigation. My mother was working through something and it showed, and that was okay. People are allowed to work through things. What mattered was that she had opened the door. The revenge was Meghna taking us both to her daughter's school play 3 months later, standing in the corridor afterward and introducing us to the other parents casually, naturally, with no hesitation. The revenge was Priya, at family Diwali, pulling Dia into her room to show her something on her laptop, some design project she was working on, and the two of them spending an hour in there while the rest of us watched TV, and coming out still mid-conversation, Dia gesturing at something with genuine enthusiasm, Priya saying, "See, I told you the color palette was wrong," with the certainty of someone who has found a kindred spirit. The revenge was all of this. The ordinary, accumulated weight of a life lived without apology. The weeks and months of just being here, being whole. That is what no one can take from you, once you have it. Part 9, What I Know Now. 6 months after my birthday party. I am sitting at my desk at work, late afternoon, the office emptying around me. I have a good project in front of me, a clean brief, a client who actually knows what they want. The city is doing its golden hour thing outside the window. My phone buzzes. "Dia, are you still at the office?" Me, "Yeah, finishing up something." "Dia, I'm making pasta. Come over when you're done." Me, 20 minutes. "Dia, I'll believe it when I see it." Me, 45 minutes. "Dia, honest, finally." I put my phone down, smiling at my screen. My colleague Preethai, passing my desk, gives me the look she has been giving me for the past 4 months. That small, knowing, warm smile that says she sees exactly what she's looking at. "Go," she says. "You've done enough for today." 20 more minutes, I say. 45, she says and keeps walking. I turn back to my work, but the smile stays. I think about the person I was a year ago, sitting at this same desk, carrying that same locked door inside me, careful and contained and so tired without knowing quite why. I think about all the things I was afraid of. The specific texture of that fear, not sharp, but heavy. The weight of a life that is smaller than it should be. I don't carry that anymore. Not all of it, not the way I used to. I carry new things now. Harder things sometimes, and also better things. I carry the ongoing, imperfect work of being known by my mother. The surprise of Meghna, who has been more than I expected. The complicated love I have for my niece, who is a menace and also the person who saw me when I couldn't see myself. I carry the specific joy of Dia, not the idealized, untouchable joy of loving someone from a distance, but the real thing, which is messier and funnier and stranger, and better than anything I imagined on rooftops. The joy of someone who knows exactly how dramatic I get about deadlines and loves me anyway. Who has strong opinions about the correct way to make tea and is wrong about them and refuses to hear otherwise. Who called me on a random Tuesday because she heard a piece of music that she knew I needed to hear, and held the phone up, and I sat on my kitchen floor and listened, and it was perfect. That joy. The unlocked door kind. My phone buzzes again. "Priya, quick question." Me, what? "Priya, hypothetically, if I were to make a speech at someone's birthday party, would you be mad?" Me, Priya. "Priya, it's for a friend. It's fine. The friend WNTS it." Me, Is this friend aware of exactly what you're planning to say? Priya, define aware. Me, Priya. Priya, okay, fine, I'll ask her first. Me, thank you. Priya, you're welcome. Also, you owe me for your entire happiness. Me, good night, Priya. Priya, I changed your life. Me, good night. I put my phone in my bag, close my laptop, and stand up from my desk. Outside, Mumbai is going amber and orange, the sky doing what it does in November, that particular warm, low light that makes the whole city look like something you'd want to remember. I take the stairs instead of the elevator, the way I've started doing lately, just because I like the extra few minutes of moving without thinking. On the ground floor, I push through the glass door into the evening air. Dia is standing outside, leaning against the wall with her hands in her pockets, looking up at the sky, wearing an old jacket of mine that she borrowed 3 months ago and has not returned, and that I have stopped expecting back. She looks exactly like herself, like the person who said, "I love this city so much it physically hurts sometimes in the rain," and who makes tea incorrectly, and who spent an hour talking shop with my 17-year-old niece and came out still going. She looks up when the door opens. 42 minutes, she says. You came to pick me up, I ask. I was in the neighborhood. You live 40 minutes away. I was in a distant neighborhood. She pushes off from the wall. Come on, the pasta will dry out. She starts walking. I fall into step beside her. Our hands find each other without either of us looking down. The city moves around us, loud and warm and ongoing, and I think, here I am. All of me. Here. Clapperboard final hook. That birthday party was the night I thought my life had been set on fire. But here's what I know now. Some fires don't destroy you. Some fires just clear away everything you were carrying that was never yours to carry in the first place. The shame, the fear, the carefully maintained invisibility, the locked door. All of it burned. And in the space it left, pasta going cold in Bandra, a niece who is a menace, a mother learning to stretch, a sister who surprised me, and a hand in mine on a Mumbai evening that I will remember as long as I live. The girl who learned to disappear learned something else. She learned to stay. Sparkle's thumbnail prompt. Left side, close-up cinematic frame. 2 women standing on a rooftop at night, city lights glowing far below. Their faces are turned toward each other, inches apart, one of them with her hand raised slightly, not touching yet, just close. Both expressions are raw and open, tears not fallen, eyes locked. The moment just before everything changes. Right side, pure black/blank for bold white text overlay. Lighting, warm amber from city glow below, deep blue from the open sky above. Faces half-lit, cinematic. Mood, tension, truth, the held breath before the fall. Text suggestion to overlay. She told them all in front of everyone. Bell call to action. If you made it to the end of the story, you felt it too, didn't you? Riina spent 2 years carrying something she was afraid to say out loud. And it took a 17-year-old with a microphone and absolutely no sense of occasion to break open a life that was waiting to be fully lived. This story was about being seen, about how terrifying that is, and about how, sometimes, the most devastating thing that happens to you is also the thing that finally sets you free. If this story moved you, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe, because there are more stories like this coming, and I don't want you to miss them. Drop a comment and tell me, whose story did you see in Riina's? Yours, someone you love. And one last question. After everything, the rooftop, the Sunday mornings, the pasta in Bandra, the family dinners and the complicated love, and the hand held on an amber Mumbai evening. Should I tell you what Priya did next? Part 2 is coming. Eyes. Subscribe. You don't want to miss it.